Before we crack on with the video, I just wanted to let you know that I Drive a Classic is sponsored by Adrian Flux. I've also got all my cars insured with them, and I also have Flux Rescue, because guess what? All my cars do break down, even if I pretend they don't. If you haven't got your car insured yet, or you're looking for a new renewal quote, click the link below and get in touch with the Adrian Flux team. Hi guys, it's Steph from I Drive a Classic, and today I'm back testing this incredible Bentley Turbo R from 1989. It's the car that was said to have saved Bentley, and therefore it's a classic in its own right for that, if no other reason at all. We're going to take the car out for a drive today. I'll show you the inside, the outside and everything about it, and tell you a little bit about the history of it as well, because it's incredibly interesting. So what we'll do first of all is we'll kick off and we'll take a walk around the outside. There's never any brand snobbery on I Drive a Classic, and I'm a firm believer that more modern cars can be just as much of a classic as, say, an MGB or a Model T, and the Turbo R is a car which changed the course of history for Bentley. And in fact, Bentley probably wouldn't even be here today as we know it without the Turbo R, and therefore this definitely deserves a place in the I Drive a Classic back catalogue, even though it's definitely more modern and more luxurious than what I'd usually go for myself. Now, whilst we're doing this video, I'd like to take a quick opportunity to thank my friend Sam Skelton. He's far more knowledgeable on Bentleys than I will ever be, and so he's provided a lot of information and knowledge for this video. So if you're watching this, thank you very much, Sam. You have saved my skin on this one. Now anyway, back to the Turbo R backstory. The Turbo R, with the R standing for road holding, is the car which is known as not only the car which saved Bentley, but for many is the first car Bentley produced which deserved the Bentley name for many decades. The car came to market in 1985 and was produced until 1997, with over just shy, I think, of 7,500 made during the entire production run, and that includes the Turbo RT. Now, this might seem quite a small number, but when you think about luxury vehicles, like cars made by Aston Martin, for example, you don't get the same big volumes that you might get on something like a Ford Fiesta. The story of the Turbo R first began with the first iteration, which was the 1982 Mulsanne Turbo. It had the engine of Corniche spec with Solex 4-barrel carb instead of the twin SUs, and a Garrett Alt Research 204 Turbo. Had no suspension changes, and really the main cosmetic differences were the colour-coded grille. But really, the Turbo R all begins in 1985 as we know it. So that's when we first got the Turbo R, and it changed the game completely for Mulsanne. The Turbo R was created with thicker anti-roll bars and many other suspension changes, and unlike the Mulsanne Turbo, which had the alloys as an optional extra, this car had the alloys as standard. So it wasn't just the bigger things they'd thought about, it was those little touches as well. Now, the work on improving the handling had begun in 1983, when the roll stiffness was increased 50%. It originally been talked about only doing it 10%, but they took it up to 50%, and the anti-roll bar rates were up to 100% in the front and 60% in the rear. They also increased the damping, and with amendments to the rear subframe, the car justified the R in its name, and it completely changed what the buyer had known Bentley to produce. It was so different. Now, of course, the engine in this is the 6.75 litre turbo Bentley V8, and being the earlier car, we've got the 3-speed TH400 automatic box, which when you see when we go for a drive, it isn't sluggish like some of those older auto boxes, and it really works with the pace you're driving at, and it almost feels like it's preempting your next move. It feels very modern for the era of the car. Now, of course, with all these wonderful bits and pieces going on, both inside, outside, and driving experience, it quickly took the shine off the Mulsanne Turbo, and that was quietly brought to a close production-wise in 1986. Now, like all good manufacturers and like with all good cars, Bentley didn't rest on their laurels on this one, and various changes were made throughout production, including gaining EFI in 1987 and Active Ride for 1989. Alongside that revised dash. Now, you know, when we look inside this, that whilst we have got that EFI, we don't have that uprated dash and we don't have the Active Ride. So it's on that cusp of change, and it's probably one of the last cars that was sold with that older dash. A lot of more modern owners of the Bentley Turbo Rs prefer this age of vehicle because it avoids the active ride, because some people really don't like that. It can be a bit problematic. But should you purchase one with active ride, or you're looking at it and thinking, I like it, but I don't want the active ride, don't despair, because a lot of garages specialising in Bentleys seem to be quite uncomfortable, quite comfortable even, undertaking the work to change it back to the earlier spec. You'll also notice when we're going out for a drive and when we're looking around this car that we've got the column change in this. Now, the column change was dropped in 1992 and the car gained a 4-speed box to boot. Specialists will also advise it was around this time that Bentley invested in the new Zytec engine management, which is shared with Continental, and apparently these cars are more susceptible to head gasket failure. So if you're going to look at one, that's probably something you should be checking. Now, there were other facelifts throughout the production lifetime, including one in 1996 with the shallower grille, and of course that Turbo RT, which was launched in 1996. But eventually the car was replaced by the Enage in 1997. Now, fun fact for those of you at home that like a few geeky facts like me, the Enage naming convention comes from, or I believe it comes from, the Le Mans track, because Enage is part of that track. Now, we've talked a little bit about this lovely car, but what's it like in more detail inside, and what is it like to drive? Well, let me flip into that driver's seat and show you. Now, it's funny because sometimes people request cars, and I feel like there must be a season for it, because so many of you have asked this year to see a Bentley Turbo R. And I was chatting away to TJ and he said, I've actually got a Turbo R dropping in. Do you want to come and see it? And I said, yeah, go on then. And I'm pleasantly surprised by it, because plenty of Bentleys and Rolls Royces that you see from this era, once they get to this point and they've started to lose the peak of their value, people start to scrimp on them a little bit. And I like the fact that this one in particular has been very well looked after. There was only that little, I don't know if you spotted it, it's about 2 minutes into the exterior walk round, got that little paint chip above the Bentley badging on the back. It's the only thing really that I've noticed, because I know that with things like I think it's the bonnet and the doors and stuff being aluminium, that when it meets the steel that you can end up with, I think it's galvanised, is it called galvanisation? When it starts to rot away. And I just think this is a very, very nice car. And it's not just nice on the outside, because it's nice on the inside as well. Right through from things like that blue piping on the seats, the leather being in really top quality condition, right through to these lambswool overmats. Everything inside it is very nice, including this dash, which, if I'm honest, I did think it might have cracked, but it must have been garaged because it's absolutely flawless. Now, the great thing about taking out Bentleys and Rolls Royces from this era is that, unlike a lot of cars, like your typical 80s run-of-the-mill stuff, which tends to look quite dated by this point, the styling in this, I feel, looks quite timeless. Now, when we're talking about the styling in here, it's worth mentioning that this is the older style dash. So I think it changed over in 89 at some point. So this must have been right on the cusp when they went over to the air ride. And as you can see, the materials that they've used are very high quality, because it stood up to the test of time. And it's not a garage queen that hasn't been used. It's on 78,000 miles. And generally, it's just a very nice car. So first of all, we've got the glove box over here. And again, it's those fixtures and fittings that you can feel the quality that maybe necessarily I can't show you in the video, and that you have to be here to feel with your own hands. Now, something that I do like on these is that you've got the old style dashes. I hate all this digital stuff. It's a bit of a preference for me that I do like this analog stuff. And in the centre here, you've got your oil pressure, you've got your temperature, and you've got your petrol gauge. Coming down into your blowers, you've got a clock there, you've got the battery health, and you've got the outside temperature as well. So you've got enough going on where it feels like you've got everything that you need without it feeling like they've just tried to shoehorn loads of stuff in to justify the value of the car. Coming down from there, we've got the cassette radio, and I love the fact that this hasn't been changed for a CD changer, because at some point in its life it would have been fashionable to change that over, and I like that originality, that it's in keeping with the era of the car. Coming down, you've got a seatbelt warning light, and then you've got a selection of lovely chrome bits and pieces here. So you've got your ashtray, you've got a cigar lighter, you've got your electric switches for the mirrors. And guess what? They still work. Now, coming down here, you'll see that you've got your, what are they called? Like the buttons that you move to move the position of your seat. Now that's pretty swanky, but you know what's swankier? These preference buttons. So what you do is you can have up to 4 people in driver and passenger side at the front, and you can set their presets. So when they get back in, it's all set to them. How incredible is that? Now, somebody watching this and that really knows their stuff will tell you that these switches break very frequently. So I think the later switches, the chrome style ones, are less prone to breaking. Now, I've asked TJ about this. Driver's side, probably the most important, because that's the one you're most likely to adjust. That still works, but your passenger side unfortunately doesn't. But to say we've got a lot going on this dash, and that's the only thing that doesn't work, I think it's pretty good going. Now, coming in front of us, we've got our heating and air conditioning inside the car. So you've got upper temperature, lower temperature. It's all very fancy, isn't it? Coming up from that, you've got your rev counter, you've got your speedo, mileometer, and then just a little bit like, I took out a Silver Spirit at work the other day, and again, the same panel, because of course it does take that. I think the early of these cars do take that Silver Spirit styling. You've just got those warning. It's just like a warning panel really, and you've just got all the bits and pieces over there. You've got your panel dim. I don't know what I think to this. I mean, it's a very old school thing. You don't seem to see it on cars anymore, but on older cars it was all the rage because people thought that you could be distracted by panel lights. So you've got panel dim on there, you've got fog lights, and you've got your oil level button press there as well. Now, it feels like there's a lot going on when you first get in the car, but as you can see, I've got through that relatively quickly. And as I say, it feels all very naturally placed. Sometimes you get in cars, I think it was it was one of the Triumphs that I took out, and I said it just felt like they just plonked everything everywhere without thought. In this, it feels very thoughtful. Everything, all your quality is all there. Everything right down to the steering wheel that you're holding, it all just screams quality, luxury. And really, it's probably one of the main reasons it's known as the car that saved Bentley. Now, there is one more thing that I'm going to show you before we go out for a drive, and that's something that you probably have never seen on a Turbo R before, because it's not one of those things that you see every day. It's this sunroof up here. Now, as you can see, the sunroof is working, and it's a very rare factory option. Apparently, not many of them have it. I've certainly never seen one with it on, and so it's a nice little thing to have. And as you can see, when it opens up, it's all working as well. So everything so far has been very pleasing. The outside condition of the car is very nice. The seats are very sumptuous. It's very comfortable. For me, it kind of ticks all those boxes that you want from a luxury car without screaming, wow, look at me, I've got loads of money, because I really hate when you see cars that do that and you're saying, it's not great. So I think I've waffled on enough about what's going on in here. I've told you a bit about the car. Should we get it started up? We'll have a listen to that engine from the inside, outside, and I'll take you for a drive and I'll tell you what it's like. Before we set off on this drive, I have something so funny to show you. So you probably saw this horn, and I thought I'm going to save that for when we go for a drive. So listen to this. Normal horn, what you might expect to hear. But what's this? I'm going to leave it on that. People are going to hear it and be like, no way is that coming out of that Bentley. Right, we're going to go for a drive. It's relatively simple. Just kick it down into drive. Got the handbrake off. And I'll just take you out for a spin. I've been out on this now for, about 10 minutes? And there are some cars, I always talk about this, there are some cars I take out on test, and I can have them out sometimes for an hour, and I still feel like at the end of the test that I feel quite intimidated by them, or I feel uncomfortable. But in this, to say that it's not my natural habitat, I feel alarmingly at home in it. It's very, very easy. Now, in terms of your creature comforts, your seats are incredibly comfortable. You can tell that they've been upholstered really well, which is something we should discuss actually. So if you buy one of these and the interior is a little bit knackered and you think, oh, I'll go and get another one off eBay, or I get it recovered. Oh no, that is expensive stuff. It's probably going to end up costing you, if you've bought a cheap one, it's probably going to end up costing you the vast majority, if not the same amount as the car itself. So that's one to be aware of if you're going out and looking for one of these to buy. I should also probably mention that I've been told on good authority that this is one of the most desirable colours in Windsor Blue, and I like it. I think it's a nice colour. I'm a big fan of darker cars. I don't know, I much prefer it to lighter colours. It's always my preference when I go looking for stuff, and it almost feels quite majestic and quite regal. I'm sure that if you took it out and you absolutely hammered it, it would be a right handful. But just going around the roads, it doesn't feel like it's got, you know, like some cars almost feel like a rabid dog on a leash that you're trying to hold back from breaking the speed limit. In this, it's just absolutely effortless. It's a real pleasure to drive, and you can see why this put Bentley back in the forefront of car buyers' minds, because it's everything that you want from a luxury vehicle. It doesn't scream, oh wow, look at me, I've got loads of money. It doesn't look tacky inside. It's not pastiche, it's not gaudy. It's just understated elegance, and when you drive, it is an elegant drive as well. From the handling to the seating position, because you're in a really nice position here where I'm sitting. I've got full visibility of the roads, the mirrors. Sometimes you get in cars who've got puny mirrors and you can't get a good view of the back of the car. With this, it is absolutely spot on in every element that I look at when I come out and test a car. And the only thing for me is there's a really small creak coming from this dash over here, which I can hear, and I mean, I'm surprised because usually I'm deaf as a doorpost, but I can hear a really tiny creak from here. But hey, it's a British vehicle and they all creak, don't they? So I love it. I think it's great. The one thing that obviously puts me off is that if you buy something like this, you can't do it in your own garage. You shouldn't be doing it in your own garage if you want to keep the value on it. It's something that needs to be going to a specialist, and I know, because I said to TJ, I said my first question was what's the service history on this? Is it good or is it a bit hit and miss? And he said no. He said it's all Bentley. It's all exactly for Bentley garages and all the rest of it. And when you look at some of the bills that run up into small telephone numbers, you think, God, if you're buying something like this, that's what you need to be looking for. You need to be looking for good service history. You need to be looking for good MOT history. Has it had proper money spent on it? Have all the bits come from somewhere like Flying Spares, or has somebody taken it to a little garage under the arches and done it on the cheap? Because this is one of those cars that if you buy a cheap one and you think, oh, I'll get all those bits done and it won't be too much, that is a bad move. So that's the only thing I'd probably say is that if you like one of these cars and you fancy buying it, you're going to have to become accustomed to the fact that it's probably going to financially ruin you at some point, because they all love having money spent on them. But that's what you get when you buy anything high-end, whether it's a cat or a car. They always want loads of money spending on them. Now this is a pretty good one. I'm quite pleased with it. I've enjoyed taking it out today. So really the only drawbacks, if you're coming to have a look at it yourself down at Dolan Classics, are of course that passenger seat, the control switches don't work. It's got this really tiny creak there. It's got that little bit of paint loss at the back. But overall, for the age of the vehicle, it's from 1989. It's a cracking example. It's got good service history, and when you take it out for a drive like me, you'll probably agree it's absolutely fantastic. It's just a really nice all-rounder. So that's it from me today. It's been a pleasure showing you the car. Coming back to see TJ again because it's turned into a bit of a social. We've had a really good day out, and yeah, it's changed my mind on what I thought about Bentleys. Usually I think they're a little bit stuffy and I'm not that keen, but I've very much enjoyed this. So until next Sunday, when I think, oh, what are we looking at next Sunday? I don't know, we've got plenty coming up actually. But yeah, until then, take care and drive safely.